All right, we got 7 o'clock, so we'll call this meeting to order. If you'd stand for the invocation, and please remain standing for the pledge. Ms. Lakeitha, will you lead us in prayer?
I will. Let us pray. Father, I come forth thanking thee for this day, a day in which we've never seen before. I ask that you bless each and every one that is gathered here for this meeting. I ask that you bless those that are viewing otherwise. Father, we ask that any decisions made here tonight be pleasing in thy sight. These and all blessings we ask in thy Son Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're all right. First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the April 20th regular meeting and the minutes of the April 23rd special call. These were in your packet. I hear a motion to approve. I hear a second.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any additions, corrections? Hearing none, call for a vote.
Councilmember Greathouse.
Aye.
Councilmember Middlebrooks.
Yes.
Councilmember Tucker.
Yes.
Councilmember Reeves.
Yes.
Councilmember Head.
All right. Next item is the adoption of the agenda. Is there any additions, corrections, anything?
If it pleases the council, I have 2 additions, one of which is the surplus of property, the excess furniture that we had when we replaced furniture coming in. There should have been a list handed out. The second item for council's consideration is discussion of potential action of the power cost adjustment that was rescinded beginning of the year for potential reenactment.
All right, you've heard these recommendations. I hear a motion to add this to the agenda.
Yes, I'll make a motion to add.
Motion to hear a second.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussions or anything? Hearing none, call for a vote.
Councilmember Greathouse.
Aye.
Councilmember Middlebrooks.
Yes.
Councilmember Tucker.
Yes.
Councilmember Reeves.
Yes.
Councilmember Head.
Yes.
All right. Next item is city attorney's report.
Nothing at this time, Mayor.
All right. City clerk's report.
Nothing at this time.
City engineer, he's here and present. Folders.
Charge us for this?
Good evening. It's $200 a copy.
So one of the things that Trey and I discussed is to go ahead and start on the paving project for 2021 instead of waiting for cold weather to go in and try to knock it out this summer. We've collected about half of our T-Splosh money and would anticipate hopefully to collect the remainder prior to completion of the paving project later on this summer. If not, to have funding and completion to be able to cash flow that through city, general funds and just reimburse when T-Splosh hits. I'll let Trey elaborate more on the process and then we'll open it up for council's discussion, but that's the general topic.
So let me walk you through the chart. And sorry it's so small. It's just a lot of information to try to get onto one page. So if you'll recall, following the columns at the top, left to right, we've got the year where the work is going to break out based on around $1.1 million annually. So we've got that broken out with running totals and with the total amount per year that we're targeting. The different colors show you the different years, 23 to 24. The pavement score, this was based off an assessment around 5 years ago that was done by another engineering group, GDOT folks, that came out and scored each section of road. So their scoring criteria was based on intersection to intersection. Okay, so a total number of points of 55. was utilized there, so that the highest ranking would be the worst road, if you will. So 55 being a perfect score of the absolute worst, all the way down. Traffic score was based off of average traffic tallies, also from a GDOT counter system that they have online. Those were scored somewhere between 10 and 30 total points based on how many cars are traveling it as another criteria. The final criteria you'll recall that we used last year was 15 total points, or 15%, that each council person could allocate that number, 15 points, to any road they might have special concern over, or several roads they may have concern over. So the overall score for each of these roads you'll see in the green, kind of going down top to bottom. Currently, as you can see, council score is empty for you all to be able to add that in. If you go continue to the right along the page, council districts, some are shared, meaning that the road is aligned between two districts, and then some of them are just allocated to those particular districts. And then the description of the intersection for that road is shown there. We did the best we could to depict that in map format, also attached. Some of the times the labels block the road shading, so in some cases it may not show perfectly. But the overall point here, folks, is that this is the methodology we used last year. I think that some on council felt like it may have worked, some maybe thought that it didn't. And so Russell wanted me to come back and just revisit this with you tonight, talk you through the process, let you look at how things broke out, not because we've done anything with the numbers. These are the same numbers as you saw last year.
Yeah, this is a raw data computation, right? This based on three criteria, one of which was the asphalt integrity, the other being the traffic count, and the third being any political points that you wanted to assign. That's the methodology. We just rolled that straight forward to this year. And we've kind of kicked around whether that's the best formula, whether council wanted to modify it. There was some current concern last year when we let the paving schedule that we segmented some of the roads up a little bit too much, and maybe we should have, went a block or two more. If that paving criteria or that particular stretch of road hit within the 5 years of the total T-SPLOST referendum. So this is the starting point. And what we would like council's feedback on is, one, do we like the methodology? 2, do we need to tweak the methodology? 3, do we need to go to a totally different format to assign road paving? And then lastly, is there a clear understanding of the paving project that we would put out to bid prior to us engaging the engineer to finalize plans to get our geotechs ramped up and put the bid documents together? So wanted to present it, let council digest it. Wanted to invite your comment to see if we needed, a work session on the particular issue, or if there were any questions or anything that you may have thought of that we needed to add to the matrix to make it more comprehensive and fair, so that we can proceed. The underlying goal was to get something in your hand so that we can move forward before we run out of warm weather.
Yeah, which kind of happened to us last year. We got behind and never caught up, and then we're facing the rainy season along with the cold season to try to pave.
So the year 2020, were those roads done in 2020?
Mm-hmm.
All of those were done?
The last paving contract.
Okay. And the 2021, these are the roads that are
So for consideration,
for this year.
yes. And we kind of broke that out tabulation-wise, Trey, based on the bids that we received last time. Is that how we kind of computed, how much money would be allocated for that particular segment?
And they are rough numbers. I mean, we haven't set the perfect scope, but this gives an idea of how many roads we may be able to tackle. I think last time and this time, probably 2 or 3 more roads will be added in as we go through the process.
So the prices, the estimate was come up with when?
We modified it off of our latest bid and some of the latest information that we've received from prices that we've gotten recently. But the budget, we are assuming here that we're milling in overlay, which is kind of the worst case level of work that we would have to put into each road. So as we back off of realizing that that particular scope does not require milling, maybe it's just overlay or maybe it's something else, then usually we end up this being a worst case budget.
Yeah, and we also anticipate there's gonna be a little bit more funds, right? So the original concept was based on T-Splosh collections from the first year of the bond issue, which we were about a month short on the collection due to when the referendum hit. So I think there's probably gonna be a little bit of wiggle room to add some additional streets, that fall under whatever criteria the council picks. One of the roads that I had recommended to Trey was that section of, was it 6th Avenue that lies between
19 and
Ingalls and, between 19 and A Street. Some short segments like that that I would recommend, after we choose our allotment.
And the only reason I ask that question is because it's just been such a crazy increase in building materials and all kind of stuff. But you feel like this is still pretty accurate.
I think so, and you can see that it's not too different than the number of roads. I mean, everything kind of averages out as you look at this. You've got one part of it that's 0.1 mile and one part 0.6 miles. And by the time you look at it globally like this, you find that, okay, 15 roads, maybe.
So the presentation was approximately 5 miles.
Yeah.
And the running total was what, 180,000 per mile,
Yeah.
which is kind of in the range we've been using for estimates.
Something else I think you and I talked about, and maybe that's what you mentioned a few minutes ago, as far as paving segments of the road rather than paving the entire street. Yeah, that was something I had a question about, rather than doing it in phases, that if you're gonna do a street, do the entire street.
Yeah, it makes sense. Actually, County Road is one that scored badly, and we did just segments of to get by years ago. Hannah's Mill is one where all of Hannah's Mill was set to be done, but we only did one segment that first time. But your point's well made. I did look at kind of, and if you look at kind of the way things, we're picking up the end of Triune Mill, North Bethel, the entire road's getting done with this project. Each roadway, I looked, there was one segment that was kind of left out that I thought, may or may not catch someone's eye, which is the Goodrich, between R Street and L Street, somewhere in there. It just scores very well, but everything else on that road scores poorly. So, it's up. That's the kind of guidance we're looking for. If y'all say no, if you're going to do anything to do it all, then we need to. It's just mathematical, truly. I mean, it is a function of. We took what the engineers that did the assessment for the health of the roads, what they gave us, which is intersection to intersection, and that's the way this is all tabulated. But that can all be changed where it's practical. But this is the discussion. Is it worth doing it and leaving off another road or not? So.
Can you retabulate this and just assigning the same grades, but doing the whole road and see how it plays out? I think giving us a list and with the understanding that it's the entire road, rather than just segmentations, and see how it looks.
Yeah, that would be simple.
I think that makes the most sense as well. You just see how they fall.
I don't think we're too far from that.
No, I was just kind of scanning through the streets, and if you're going to do all of, County Road's terrible.
Well, County Road, this project will do 100% of County Road to completion, yet 2 years ago, we did just the worst spots right there near Atlanta Gas. And then the county now has come all the way to the bridge where the lake is. They've come on that side of it all the way to the city limits. So now what we'll do is pick up and finish that road out completely.
Hannah's Mill, I guess, that's fairly close to being 100% given what we've already done.
Correct, yeah.
So it's pretty close.
I think we're getting close there. County Road would be finished. Triune Mill Road, I think, is taking this all the way out to the city limits with this solution. East Lee, that's one I need to look at. That may still leave a stretch beyond
I think it does.
what I'm doing to the city limits. Your density starts to go down quite a bit as you get towards the end of these roads, but, you know, man, that's not to say they shouldn't be done.
Well, I appreciate your methodology and your prioritization. You've had, like I said, we've had hit hard spots, the worst parts of the road which we went through last year. I think we're on the right path now for treating everybody fairly and equally and giving everybody the opportunity to voice their concerns about the roads in their district.
Would next year be a good time to reassess the pavement scores?
We're right there. Most people go off of a 5-year reassessment. And I'd really like, last time we really went just with whatever the engineer's recommendation was as far as the methodology used. And I'm working with Russell right now. I'm looking at a couple of different, there's some high-tech solutions now with a lot of this pavement scoring where there's a group out of Florida that comes in with, you know, the bottom of the truck is all fitted with cameras and it is taking running video plus stills all the way along. It's all tied back into GIS. And then you can come in, pull it up, and they've got all of the reasons why it was scored the way it was. I mean, and the pricing I heard, which I've not gotten in a formal quote, was not offensive at all. It's about what we paid to have the other firm do it by hand. And all we ended up there was a 3-ring binder this thick of single piece of paper that now I've gotten kind of into our GIS, but I mean, these are all steps that we can have another firm take care of for us. And so it's we're looking at that, but September would be my recommendation of starting to look at it. If council said, no, let's get it moving now, we could.
If you had to back me into a schedule from point decision has to be made, these are the streets we want, to get me where I'm paving in warm weather, you know, what's kind of the cutoff point we need to be solidified on the list?
Well, if we're not scoring, if we're not going to rescore, so we go with something like what we've got in front of us, then, you know, what we'd be talking about is a month, probably a month and a quarter to get geotech, verify what we've got, set the scope, and get the plans and specs out. So then you've got a month of contract period. I'm sorry, you've got a month of advertisement. Then you've got a month of contract period and then start construction. So you're looking in the 120 days, 100 days from now. So 3.5 months probably from starting to pour asphalt. So you're looking at into the summer right now if you get things moving. And you know, very quickly, you know how it goes, Thanksgiving. You know, so you know, we really want to make some decisions in a couple of weeks is what I would say, just to be safe.
So I guess the first thing is, do we agree on the methodology? Or do we want to change the weighting? Do we want to less rely on asphalt integrity, put more emphasis on traffic count? Do we want more emphasis on political swag with regards to the percentage calculation? Are we good with the set percentages? I guess I'm looking for tasking for me and Trey. You know, do we need to modify anything other than come back with alternate solutions with omitted segmentation, just pave the whole road? Or what else? What else do we want to do?
I think you should look at traffic for one thing. Road that has the most traffic on it. I think that's one thing you need to look at.
All right, so right now we have asphalt integrity at 55% of the weighted score, and we have traffic at 30. So what would be a preferable percentage allocation? And we can run the math.
I personally like taking the political thing out of it.
I was just thinking.
I would rather I'd rather have it all traffic and pavement and kind of.
I mean, because that was the whole purpose of this,
Yeah,
was to take the political element out of it.
So it ain't like somebody comes up, Ryan, I want my road
I
paved.
think 55-45 would make it, I mean, because it's really not going to matter how much traffic it has if the road fails. So
55-45.
whatever you want to think.
With the thought of, you know, extending the road if it need, I mean, common sense in that as well. I mean, if there's a section of it not getting paved, yeah, we're gonna pave that section.
Yeah.
I think definitely the political part, to me, is the weak part, because the other two are facts. You're looking
Yeah.
at facts, the
I agree with
pavement
that.
and the traffic. And if You know, if you wanted to leave a little, you could go 50, 40, 10 or something like that.
Well, my thought was from time to time, citizens do have complaints. And that's where if a road doesn't particularly score really bad, but there's high citizen complaints, right, then you had that 15% move to maybe
But wouldn't you capture what the citizen complaints probably would be captured
With
in the integrity?
it could be, but like sometimes we may have a road that's more travelable.
Alligator cracking versus potholes.
Right.
So alligator cracking is just little, we know from an engineering perspective, it's past its service life. We've got to get in here and do something, and it's just going to continue to get worse. But the rideability score would be high, but from an engineering perspective, we know it's got to be rebuilt. So it's like,
It may score worse than a road with potholes. You get more complaints on the potholes, but from an engineering standpoint, the alligator cracking's worse.
and the way the scoring criteria for asphalt integrity, the way that worked is, you could have alligator cracking in a couple of spots, but you could have 10 potholes, and the scoring, just sometimes Russell and I just noticed that, man, is that really representing the drivability of the road or not? And in many cases, we came away from it thinking that if council had, well, there's two things. If council felt like there were so many complaints on there that it should be pushed up the list, or if a council member it just so happened based on the criteria that they didn't have any roads getting paved, they could impact it with 15 points to drive something that they're getting a lot of complaints on, drive it up the list and maybe have that major road for them get paved. 15 points is about enough to push a road from an extra year away into this year's paving, if you will, if you put all your points there. I don't think you assigned points last year, and I don't think Doug did.
I just wanted to go to whatever the worst road.
That's what you said, yeah, just do the worst roads. And I don't recall, but I think it impacted just a couple of roads last year by assignment by council. It did not do very much.
But if we do a different way of pavement assessment for the following year, it should maybe take some of that out, maybe?
I would spend a little more time this time we do this pavement acceptance. I think that we would get out there and I would want to understand, why does this grade a 40 and why does this grade a 55? Like Russell does too. We both want to be there while those decisions are getting started, because it just, sometimes it clicks and sometimes it doesn't for what really matters. I think it does a good job of that engineering side of things, meaning where the road's past its serviceable life, but I don't know that it does a great job with drivability. A lot of patches and a lot of potholes, things that affect your everyday driver. The other thing it didn't take into account was speed limit with certain types of issues going on with that particular road that make drivability more rough than maybe if it's 15 miles an hour, it's a lot different than 40 if you've got certain kinds of issues. So anyway, I mean, I think that if we can get everybody nodding their head this year, my recommendation would be that after this year's decision, we go out and do a reassessment. We make sure that you guys are involved in understanding how the algorithm's going to work.
And I think then you would definitely not need the council.
I agree wholeheartedly. If we get it perfect,
Yeah.
and even guys, I'll even tell you the traffic score even somewhat is, I mean, these are very rough calculations of traffic. So we just did an assignment based on average daily cars, and that was based on the GDOT website. I mean, it is not, we didn't go out with traffic counters, obviously. But
We need to make this some kind of decision by
we
next meeting.
You know, we can run 3 scenarios. We can run a scenario with a 15% margin for council, or we can back that down to a 55-45 with a omission of segments, and we can give you multiple options.
But I think on both scenarios, you're just going to run entire roads rather than segments.
We can.
I think what I'll do is a weighted ratio. So if you've got, this is what's interesting, is if you've got this much road that's so bad, then that would score, let's call it a 55, okay? The rest of the road is this long, and it's a 25. So What we said is, fix the 55. We gotta get that fixed up, but we don't wanna do the 25. So now what I would say to you is, I ought to do a weighted average based on length.
25 might kick it down.
25 will drag that bad road down, so it's going to, I think it's gonna have quite an effect on the numbers. And we can work it all out in the spreadsheets, but, I'm not sure that that's what you want. I think that, you know, in certain cases, it'll make perfect sense, and in certain cases, it's gonna knock the worst piece of road in town where people are having a horrible problem and putting it 4 years down the road. Could be the impact. Or you say to me, well, instead, and I know this is complicated, but you'd say to me instead, hey, no, if there's one piece of it that's ranked a 55, the whole road gets ranked a 55. That's the other option. And that's
Guess
not
it
about,
just depends on how much length that is, you know, how much of the road is ranking 55 versus 25.
which is why the weighted average
Yeah.
fixes that.
Exactly.
I can run it those ways. I mean, it's calculation.
We have to look at that and get it back. We can try to make a decision and we'll get it ahead of time so you can make a decision at the next meeting. That way we can kind of press forward.
Works for me.
That sound good, everyone?
So do y'all like to see, do you like to see all of the data, or is it, should I boil it down just to a couple of years out? Or is it helpful to kind of see everything the way it fleshes out? Should I work with all the numbers? Doesn't matter to
I
me.
think a couple of years maybe. You know,
I think
those-
especially since we're gonna reassess it.
Yeah.
I mean, because people call up all the time or ask, when's my street? You can kind of go and say, it looks like 2024, but we may be totally different. It may be
Yeah.
2022 next year, or it may be 2030, according to the way that we reassess the roads. So we want to put,
I had some people that would come and say, well, where's my street? Because it's been said in the past that they can do this. But when I said, look, here's the data. This is what we went off of. They didn't have a whole lot of argument with me once. I said, look, here's how we assessed it. And they thought it was a pretty thorough assessment based on the, you know,
it was on
payment
the
and,
website too, wasn't it? It was on the website, so a lot of people just directed people to that, and they were like, oh, okay, you know, they see, oh yeah, that road is a lot worse than mine, you know, it kind of,
Oh, I live in Monroe County, and they go out and pave, and, you know, everybody in Monroe County knows it's based just on who you are and who makes the most noise up there. I mean, it has nothing to do with any of these criteria that actually are very defensible. It's got nothing to do with that. It's who complains and who knows who, you know, and it's pathetic. But that's what they do.
So do you still feel pretty good about the 55, 30, 15 if we want council input?
I felt like it made sense. You know, the numbers just seem to break up on what my assessment would be of importance. I do think pavement score is probably nearly twice as important as traffic, in my opinion. And I think,
Well, I think it's fair to say too, there's going to be some level of subjectivity in the asphalt integrity assessment itself and the traffic count itself.
everything is subjective.
So
Yeah.
the 15% kind of helps bleed that.
Normalizes a couple of things that are, we've got a lot of very specific numbers on here, but you just need to realize everything is rough. You know, just trying to develop a criteria where all of us can nod our heads and say, you know, we did right by the taxpayers' money. Okay, so I'm gonna work up, first off, I'm gonna work up combining the roads into where we don't have broken segments under the current weighting. Then I'm gonna rework those roads based on distance and the different weighting, or the different pavement scores within those, and traffic scores, although the traffic scores will be the same for the segments. What was the third option? This?
So we were the
55-45.
eliminating the 15%.
Yep. And 55-45 sounds good for seeing what that looks like. Okay. And our goal is to get those options back next week, maybe to council, and then try to come together at the next meeting and discuss and finalize.
Yep.
That sound fair to everyone? Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trey.
Next item, city manager's report.
First item for council's consideration is if there are any potential appointments or nominations for the Thomaston Upson Library Board.
Can we get anybody on that? Ask you one.
The next item for council's consideration is authorization to execute distribution into the city's trust fund from MEAG Power's 2020 year-end settlement amount. You should have a copy attached with your packet headed G2. There you'll find the election form for this year where the amount to be considered is $371,156. And you also have a copy of last year's election form. To submit the transfer to the flexible trust requires 2 signatures. Staff is requesting authorization to execute that. The full amount of $371,156 to be deposited into the flexible interim term portfolio, which is the same portfolio that funds were deposited in last year. And for council's reminder, these are the trust accounts that we hold at MEAG to offset future debt on our power system. Currently, there's about $10 million, and we continually add to that trust so that when our bond debt comes due, we can draw down those funds to offset rate increases.
All right, you heard the
Motion to approve.
a motion. Have a second.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions? Hearing none, call for a vote.
Councilmember Greathouse.
All right.
Councilmember Middlebrooks.
Yes.
Councilmember Tucker.
Yes.
Councilmember Reeves.
Yes.
Councilmember Head.
Yes.
Next item for council's consideration is the approval and authorization to submit our year-end settlement for MEAG Power's telecom project. That attachment is headed G3, and you will see that the election for this year is $1,272, and you also have the election form from the previous year. The recommendation for the telecom year-end settlement is the same as the recommendation for the MEAG year-end settlement.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, call for a vote.
Councilmember Greathouse.
All right.
Councilmember Middlebrooks.
Yes.
Councilmember Tucker.
Yes.
Councilmember Reeves.
Yes.
Councilmember Head.
Yes.
Next item for council's consideration is the approval and authorization of a resolution to update the City of Thomaston Open Records officers. You should have a copy of the proposed resolution attached as G4, which designates the city clerk, Ms. Oasis Nichols, as the official custodian of records and the open records officer for the City of Thomaston. And it also designates Mrs. Jennifer Sands as an alternate in her absence. Staff's recommendation is to authorize the resolution.
You've heard that recommendation. Do I hear a motion?
Yes, make motion.
Second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, call for a vote.
Councilmember Greathouse.
All right.
Councilmember Middlebrooks.
Yes.
Councilmember Tucker.
Yes.
Councilmember Reeves.
Yes.
Councilmember Head.
Yes.
Next item for council's consideration is the authorization to execute an ordinance for the broadband ready community ordinance. You should have a copy of the ordinance as attachment in G5. The broadband ready designation is a designation that is offered by the Georgia Department of Community Affairs. It requires modification to the joint comprehensive plan between the City of Thomaston and Upson County. It also requires that the local governments enact this broadband ready ordinance, which has to be submitted to DCA. The ordinance has already been approved by the county, and it lays out the process for review of right-of-way infrastructure for those wishing to permit. Once the designation is granted by the Department of Community Affairs, it opens the doors for available funding through the department for communities who are designated as broadband ready, quote unquote. There were some slight modifications made to the ordinance as it was presented in county form due to the fact that the city owns and operates its own power utility, and we do have certain agreements in place that are regulated through Electric Cities of Georgia for pole attachment. This does not in any way undermine our ability to infringe upon contracts or agreements that we have with other parties. So otherwise, staff's recommendation is to authorize execution of the broadband ready ordinance so that it can be submitted to the Department of Community Affairs.
You've heard that recommendation.
So
We have a motion, do I hear a second? Second. Any discussion? Hearing none, call for a vote.
Councilmember Graham.
All right.
Councilmember Middlebrooks.
Yes.
Councilmember Tucker.
Yes.
Councilmember Reeves.
Yes.
Councilmember Head.
Yes.
Next item for council's consideration is the approval of a purchase of, excuse my pronunciation, Exxon tasers. My understanding in talking with the chief of police, and I'll turn it over to him in a little bit for further edification of the process. This is a sole source with regards to tasers. They're pretty much the only ones in the game. What you have before you is a purchase agreement which will be extended over a 5-year term, payable in annual installments, and that payment schedule is depicted in your handout towards the end. It's one of the last pages, beginning at $9,487.50 for year one. It goes up incrementally to year two, and then it's constant over the 5th year for a total of $78,487.50. And staff's recommendation is for council to authorize the purchase, but prior to a motion, I'd invite Chief to explain a little bit about the process, what he's got, and for council to further understand that we anticipate funding for these tasers to come out of our Red Speed Fund and or confiscated drug funds.
That's correct. Like Russ already mentioned, Axon is the only company, every taser that's carried by a police officer in the United States is made by Axon. They are literally the sole provider for tasers. They have the market. They think a lot of their product. Our current tasers are, they're functioning, they're good tasers, but they are dated. Tasers is not like a firearm. Taser is a piece of plastic that's got electronics in it, unlike a firearm. So they do wear out. Our current tasers are about 5 to 6 years old. There is a new generation taser that I've shown you there is what we're looking at going to. The tasers that we currently have display screens on them that show the battery and just a little display screen. A lot of our display screens are not functioning properly due to their age. Our tasers, none of our tasers I believe are under warranty any further, so any little repairs that we want to make to them, we have to send them to Axon and get those repaired. They all are properly functioning, and you know, they're tested each day. They test them before they go on duty. But there's little things like the screen that shows the battery and all that that are failing on. Also, one of the things that we wanted to do, or we're considering this, is our current tasers, the last round of tasers they came out with are all black. And so if you've ever heard a taser fired, a taser sounds like a firearm. It makes a loud pop noise. And if you saw me standing in a parking lot, you might think that I shot someone with a gun. Matter of fact, I was involved in an incident in my previous agency where we tased somebody in a parking lot, and people were out there screaming, "Oh my God, they shot him!" You know, and all that. And it wasn't the case. We had tasers, and we had tased an individual. Taser at one time was making, the original tasers were yellow, so you never had that problem. If we pulled that gun, people definitely knew it was a taser because it was yellow. Well, I don't know why they went away from that, but they did. Well, now they're going back to it. And as you can see, what I handed out to you is the newest current version, and it's gone back to a yellow model. So we do, in the current atmosphere that we have going around the country with everything, that was a small factor, but we thought would be important that we have a yellow taser, so if we have to pull them and show them, people can't ever sit back and say that we pulled a firearm when we should have had the taser. You'll distinctly know the difference when you see them. Again, Russell has basically explained the program, $78,000 over 5 years. With that though, do you want to go over real quick what all we're getting with that price?
Sure. Currently, the devices that we have battery packs. They're not rechargeable, and we have to replace them occasionally when they wear out. We also have to replace the cartridges. The cartridges are $38 a shot. The minimum training requirements are each officer has to shoot 2 cartridges a year during training, which comes out to almost $80 per officer. And then, depending, the cost associated with how many cartridges are live fired during altercations, you have that cost. Under this contract here, there is no cost for any of that. The batteries are provided by Axon. If one goes bad, they send us a new one. We get, instead of the minimal training that we've been doing because of the cost of 2 cartridges a year that we pay for, Axon is going to provide us with 8 cartridges for training per officer per year during the 5-year contract. And also, all of the live fire cartridges, there is no limit. They'll send us a bunch when we first purchase the devices, and then as we go through and use them up, they'll send us new ones for free. There's no limit on that. So this is a fixed price. There is no cost to it after we pay for this. If a device goes bad, we send it in and they send us a new one.
Can y'all come and show what it feels like?
Wasn't there a training vest or something?
Yeah,
too?
we're also getting a training vest with this particular, which we've never had, but it's an actual suit that you can actually put on someone and you can actually do scenarios and shoot someone with the vest. It's also coming with some targets that have like metal in the targets so that when you hit them, you get the sparking like you would normally in a real deployment. So yes, we're getting the training benefits, and the training suit, the vest thing itself is about $800.
$750.
Yeah, that's coming with this program. So they're going to be completely covered, completely warranted during that time frame that we would have them. All the cartridges. Now, you may be wondering, we don't deploy that many taser cartridges throughout the year. We do every year have deployments, but they're very few. But when we do, they'll be replaced at no cost. If we were to go through, it's very unlikely that we would go through the amount that they supply. But we don't have to ever worry about purchasing cartridges the entire 5 years under the program.
So how many tasers are we purchasing?
25. And this would also include, with this contract, we are turning in the 25 tasers we have. They're taking those tasers back. And as part of this contract, there's no market for these tasers. Taser normally gives you $150, I think, per taser that you turn in. But they've got a deal with us right now where we're getting, I think, $340 something per taser.
They're doubling the...
Yeah, they're doubling the amount, and then including the cartridges and including the vest. If we submit and do the deal, or submit by June. It's an offer they're making to agencies right now through June.
How do you determine which of your officers get these tasers?
Okay, well, we've got 30 officers total for the whole department. So all your patrol division, all your guys on the street will have tasers, all your detectives will have the tasers. And the main people who won't have them would be myself, the major, and the admin staff that typically are in the office. And even, we'll have enough that even some of them may have them. And we will be retaining a few of the tasers that we do have. So, I mean, we'll have tasers for everyone if they're needed. But that they typically go to the people that are in the street working.
Will you come shoot Russell during a council
We
meeting?
could actually do a fundraiser, probably make a lot of money, pay so much, shoot the city manager.
What's my cut?
My concern is, of course, I think it's good that we get new tasers or what have you. I have and I think it's good that we're getting the cameras put on the poles and all out at Northside. But it's just the red speed that's funding this here. I have a problem with that. And you know, we say that we out here trying to put the safety on for the kid, you know, during school hours with red speed. But we finding ways to buy our toys with this money that we're taking in. And I disagree with, this radar being ran over there during school hours when school is in session. I still have a problem with it. I'm not saying that we don't need the item that we're trying to get, but we need to find another way of doing it instead of letting the public pay their money to it like this here. It's to me, and somebody else may feel different from me, but I just feel like it's a trap. And
Well, the only other way to pay for it is to raise taxes on everybody, so even more of the public's paying for it.
But my thing is, though, we don't need to do what we're doing to get funds to do this here. That's my thinking on it.
Well, I don't
And
consider
my
anything
understanding
that
is,
we're
excuse me,
purchasing
I'm sorry.
toys.
My understanding is that the contract is up in July. Am I right? On this red speed?
It's coming up. I don't know the particular.
I've been getting a lot of complaints on this here from all of y'all constituents. I don't know if they come to you guys or not, but they have come to me about this here. And, I try to refer them to their city councilman because, to me, it's just, it's not right how we doing our citizens as far as trying to fund our police department.
And the only thing I can say, Jeff, is we ran tests before we ever put them out there. Was it true that there was like an enormous?
That's not the point, Mayor, Pro Tem. But what I'm saying is that we set them out there and, when we voted on this thing, I was under the impression that it was gonna be doing pickup and drop off, okay? A drop off and pickup. We did not know that it was gonna be where that it's gonna be ran during school hours when school is in session.
That's incorrect. We spelled it all out. So that's misleading what you're saying,
Okay.
Mr. Councilman. I don't mean to be disrespectful, but saying that we weren't told, that is not correct. You were told every aspect of when this camera would run. So that's an incorrect statement.
Okay, well, let me say this here. That was 3 days I sat in Tasty Shop parking lot for 2 hours to watch and see the traffic that comes out of the school, at the middle school. And at those 3 days, I seen one car come out of that parking space, out of that parking lot at the school, at the middle school. And my thing is, we say this for the kids, for the safety, but it's not though, guys. It's plain of day. Everybody can see it. We trying to find a way of making money to fund our police department for them to buy the toys with. It's not right. It's not right.
Well, my only comment is, I don't consider these less lethal weapons toys. I don't consider anything that we're purchasing toys. They're equipment and things that we utilize to keep the officers safe, to keep the public safe, and to help us fight the issues that we have. So I don't consider anything that we're buying with these funds.
Maybe we need to go in there and find another way of funding that instead of just.
That would be up to you guys. I don't have any argument with that.
Not right. Not right.
Is there any other questions about Taser?
We just need to have a motion to approve the purchase of these tasers, correct? Have a motion, do I hear a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, call for a vote.
Councilmember Greathouse.
Aye.
Councilmember Middlebrook.
Yes.
Councilmember Tucker.
Yes.
Councilmember Reeves.
Yes.
Councilmember Head.
Yes.
Next item for council's consideration is the authorization to surplus equipment. The equipment being that was handed out in an attachment by the city clerk. This is in reference to the new furniture that we bought for City Hall. We have 16 desks, 2 conference tables, 1 round table, a square smaller table, 16 conference room chairs, 8 blue office chairs, 1 brown padded office chair. Currently being stored. Mr. Joyce, Finance Director, has donated the use of his warehouse to house them. Staff's recommendation is for council to declare these items surplus, also to declare these items de minimis, that each in value be less than $500. As such, we will run the proper notice in the legal organ for 15 days, and then we will have an auction to dispose of the property.
You've heard that recommendation.
Motion to approve.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, call for a vote.
Councilmember Greathouse.
Aye.
Councilmember Middlebrooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Tucker?
Yes.
Councilmember Reeves?
Yes.
Councilmember Hay?
Yes. The next item for council's consideration is the reenactment of a power cost adjustment to city utility bills. If you recall, there was a budgeted amount, I believe $190,000 that we had earmarked to account for or to accrue via power cost adjustment at the beginning of the year. That amount was .00156 per kilowatt, or $1.56 per kilowatt hours. As we got into the beginning of the year with the pandemic, council voted to rescind that power cost adjustment for a period of 90 days, which expires on this month's billing, which will go out on the 15th. I have asked ECG to give me a calculation for revenue lost under the original PCA when the city chose to rescind it, and to give me a power cost adjustment that would recapture the lost funds and to accommodate other funds based on the differential in the year-end settlement projection of $200,000 versus the $370,000 that council just voted to put into the generation trust. The end result you have in the text body from the email that we received from Electric Cities of Georgia. So to enact power cost adjustment that will be effective from May to December to generate $185,981 adjusted and as budgeted to be entered into the city's generation trust to offset future power costs is equivalent to .002031 per kilowatt hour, which is the equivalent of $2 and some change per 1,000 kilowatts for the typical residential customer. What that means is if I'm a residential customer and I use 1,000 kilowatts of power per month, my bill would go up by the equivalent of $2. If I use 2,000 kilowatts, it's going up $4, so on and so on. So presented the power cost adjustment to council sufficient enough to recoup funds lost for the, yes ma'am.
So initially, it was $1.56.
Yes.
Okay, but because of the fact we waited 90 days or whatever, now it's $2.03.
Right, and that can be highlighted if you flip and you look at this page on your handout. So for the month of January, the reduced PCA resulted in loss of $14,798, $12,365 for February. March was $12,803, and April was $12,874. So the increase in the power cost adjustment soothes that out over the remaining 8 months to pick up the lost $52,840.
Please reiterate what the average cost per household.
MEAG standards says they anticipate 1,500 kilowatts. I would put it closer to 2,000 or 2,500. So if you use 2,000 as an assumption, it's going to go up $4 a month.
Have we got the new software? How far are we out from the new software?
We have done an RFQ. We are down to 2 companies. Lonnie and I have to meet with both of those, and we're going to pull the trigger.
I still like the being able to.
We are.
Pull that
We're
out.
kind of in a bind. We've leaned on our power, provider, because we want power to be an integral piece of our software platform. The company that we like is a lot more expensive, and they can deploy in 6 months. The number 2 choice is a little bit cheaper, but it's like an 18-month deployment just to get the software in. So we're trying to balance those pros and cons before we bring council a recommendation.
Time and money.
I'd just like to thank each council member for putting that in consideration, putting it off 90 days when we've been in the pandemic. I thank y'all for putting that in consideration. I really do.
Yeah.
Russell, you had, either you sent me an email or somebody about some updates on Vogel. It's gonna start coming
Hot
online.
tests, yeah.
So, is that, how much time do you think is from the hot test to where it goes where it's actually producing?
That I don't know, but I know from a production standpoint, the first piece of that, I think we sold our megawatts to Jacksonville Power. That's why our debt on SAT, was kind of 10 years off. But I don't know when they're going to start pulling off. But I can ask that question.
I'm just curious, and what does that do once it starts going live? What does that mean for us and for the defeasement and
Well,
the debt?
it starts the time frame, but ours is backed up because we sold off the
see.
rights over
Yeah.
the first 10 years for that. So whoever purchased that at Jacksonville Power, they're actually picking up that cost for that first period of time.
And just as a reminder to people that are here and then watching, that obviously this is it's not something that we have a choice in, that this debt was basically handed to us, and there's really no
So
there's
the
no
city-
decision in this on our end that this is something that we're going to have to do. We don't have a
the
choice
bond
in the
issue
matter.
has to be paid. It's just a matter of preference and how we, generate the revenue. And there were several options, and we debated every year at budget time. We lessen the transfer to the general fund so that power revenues exist to offset the debt, or we continue to subsidize the general fund with a power utility and raise a PCA to offset the cost of the debt escalation. So those are really, or cut costs, right? Cut general fund costs. That's the third option, and this is the method that we seem to have went with.
I was talking more along the lines of the actual bond issue and the project. There wasn't much say that we had in this. This was a MEAG.
No, this was bonded out a while back, but we are on the hook for paying our share. So
Us being part of MEAG.
correct.
Yeah. But this wasn't a city, the main point, not that we're passing the buck here, but I mean, the main point is that this was a decision MEAG made. We're part of MEAG, so we're required to pay our share for what it costs for that power generation.
Yeah, and it was a local decision too. There were MEAG participants that opted out of Vogel. So at some point, the city made the local decision via MEAG that we wanted to take megawatts out of this nuclear resource. And when we did that, we bought our share based on, the cost at the time, and it escalated.
How long ago was that, you think, that there was the decision was made?
15 years, 20 years.
Wow.
In defense of the people that.
Oh, I'm not making it, it was the wrong move. That's a lot.
Yeah,
you can't armchair quarterback this thing.
Right.
And at that
Had no
time,
idea.
Natural gas prices were through the roof, I
yeah,
believe.
and also the,
Portfolio.
nuclear power is still, people look out in the future and say it is still, once you get the thing built, it is not only cheaper but cleaner.
Yeah.
And so, and Russell, I guess the major part of the debt is like a construction permanent loan, and once they finally get it online is when that bond debt starts going, really.
No, please don't misunderstand with begrudging how and why the decision was made, but just that it was probably not something that was taken very lightly, that it was thought out.
And we're going to recalculate and reproject every year based on the return in our trust account, based on our load growth at the local level, how much power we sell. All that goes into the matrix where we calculate debt payment to revenue generated, and every time we get a new projected operating revenue 10-year forecast, we plug the numbers in and we reproject.
And Russell, just like we're sold power to Jacksonville, there's still the opportunity to possibly do that in the future, yes?
Sure.
Yeah, so if we get down, we recalculate, we find out that our supply is more than the demand or more than projected demand, we could go out into the market and say who might need it, and we could sell it.
Depends on where you are. If you're long or short, depends on if you need the power and what power is cheaper.
So this amount, Russell, is for the rest of the year, right? So what do we do about next year? Do we go back and look at it again?
So what we will do is when MEAG presents us with our operational budget based on wholesale cost going into our next budget cycle, we will reproject the calculation as to what we want to put back based on that model to offset future goals.
It could be more or less.
Will be more.
How often would you make the decision on whether we sell our potential supply?
Our analytics group looks at that based on the commodity costs and the load requirement for the individual city. We had one, I think it was, what did we sell a couple meetings back? We sold some, was it Sandersville, I think.
So is it ebbs and flow? I mean, or is it okay, every 12 months you got to make a decision? We're going to forecast out of how much power you're going to need, and
Well,
this
they
is what you're allocated.
reproject it every year.
Okay.
Right. They project our load, and right, we have to have that peak load in reserve, where you read about the issue that was in Texas, where they only had to have 1% reserve. You know, the Public Service Commission in Georgia regulates that a little bit more stringent. You have to have a higher reserve, so they take all your peaking factor, current assets, and all that goes into the formula. My preference would be heading into 2022 would be to not issue a power cost adjustment, but to actually tie it to rate class, and for it to be differential amongst residential, industrial, small power, demand power, commercial power, for marketability factors as we're competing with other power utilities for customer choice. But we'll have those different presentations to make as we get into the budget.
We just need to know if we want to do this one
For the rest of 21.
for the rest of this year, starting at this budget. I mean, starting at this month's billing cycle.
June, isn't it? Or is it
It
this
will be for the bills mailed out on the 15th.
of May?
Yeah.
Okay.
Online, the information shows that Vogel 3 and 4 started construction in 2013, so it's probably about 20 years. Just so you know.
Is there a motion to do this or keep suspending it?
And the problem is, if we suspend it, then that price is going to go up.
You spend it 9 days, you're probably looking at, it went up from what, 13 to,
On a 30-day month at
Yeah.
$4, and I'm not
yeah.
belittling $4 a month, but it's 13 cents a day. How do you look at it? Based on 30-day month.
And what we're trying to do is to prevent future massive rate
Right.
hikes, right?
Smooth
So
it out.
our operational to debt load looks pretty flat for the next 10 years. So all the money that we're collecting by the power cost adjustment is going into an escrow account to pay off future debt. We could not do that and still be status quo for our operations and debt payments, and we can rock on for 10 years. But once that bond debt comes on and the price starts escalating, we're going to have to recoup enough revenue within that 1 year period to make the bond debt payment and to sustain operations. So we're trying to take the swing out of budgets, by kind of spreading it over a period
Paying
of
$2
time.
or $4 a month more now rather than 40 or 50.
We're mortgaging it over 30 years instead of stroking a check for it at one time.
And all of these funds will be in a restricted account outside of city control, and it won't be in the general fund. This is a restricted account.
The funds are
MEAG.
not restricted per se in the fund class that they're held in. My understanding is that funds tied to the generation trust are more restricted, and they have more, the maturity date is longer before you can access them. But the flexible operating account could be drawn down by the city based on, I think there's 2 signatures required to transact from MEAG. Council authorizes it. You get 2 signatures and you can draw down. They'll wire you whatever you want out of the flex account.
But I guess what I'm saying is not going into the general fund.
No,
of
no,
cities.
it's held at MEAG.
Yeah.
Just like we just put those other funds.
Correct. It's not even on your cash report yet.
It's not like we're paying anything in our
Right.
budget for it. It's just, it's flexible. We could pull out emergency
emergency.
situation, yeah.
I would make the motion that we enact the power cost adjustment.
We have a motion, do I hear a second?
I'll second.
A motion and a second, any discussion, further discussion? Hearing none, call for a vote.
Councilmember Greathouse.
All right,
Councilmember Middlebrooks.
Yes.
Councilmember Tucker.
Yes.
Councilmember Reeves.
Yes.
Councilmember Head.
Yes.
That's all the business I have, Mayor, other than a brief executive session concerning personnel.
Alright. If there's not any other business, we need a motion to go into executive session.
Motion.
Personnel. Alright, motion in that second. Call for a vote.
You want me to show you how to do
and call
this?
for what? Yeah, you can't do it.
Call for a vote.
Oh, sorry.
Councilmember Greathouse. For executive session. We're voting to go into executive session. Councilmember Middlebrooks.
Yes.
Councilmember
Yes.
Tucker. Councilmember Reeves.
Yes.
Councilmember Head.
I would.
Oh, we are doing this.
Oh, no.
Well, I'll call Cora, I think, with JD and see.
Take a break for a minute.
See this? Something stand out there.
Yes.
Tell Bill, yeah.
Just tell them we're going.
We're on.
All right.
We're live.
All right, we're back in regular session. We have another, yeah, we're going to see one of these come in. So we're,
They're gonna stay on.
okay, so we're back in regular session. We have to need another motion to go into executive session because we have two items. A motion for personnel and real estate.
I'll make a
And
motion.
do we need something for legal?
Just real estate.
Just real estate? Okay.
I'll make a
And
motion.
personnel, right?
Personnel. So we,
I'll make a
motion,
motion, we go into executive session to discuss real estate and personnel.
do I have a second?
No second.
All right, second. No questions, call for a vote, please.
Councilmember Rittenhouse.
All right.
Councilmember Middlebrooks.
Yes.
Councilmember Tucker.
Yes.
Councilmember Reeves.
Yes.
Councilmember Head.
Yes.
I'll say time.
Paid good bucks.
All right, we're on.
All right, we're back in regular session now. You don't see if anybody wants to come in now? All right, we're back in regular session. I hear a motion to adjourn. Second. All in favor say aye. Let's go. All right.
Good evening, guys.
Go to, Russell, you got any to-go boxes?
You want me to get some napkins? Seriously, y'all take some on. Look at here.
Go buy a shoe. I think these other movies.
Take care.
Mr. Keith, you said you can't do